humiliated on Prince Harry's most recent UK trip, and that the trip turned into a nightmare, forcing Markle and her children to return home to California earlier than
a royal reunion that lasted less than an hour, and according to explosive new claims from one of Britain's most respected royal biographers, it left one member of the Sussex household completely shattered in ways that have fundamentally changed the family dynamic forever, because what was supposed to be a bridge-building moment between a father and his estranged son quickly transformed into one of the most controlled, cold, and calculated encounters in modern royal history. And the revelations emerging from this meeting are now sending shockwaves through palace corridors on both sides of the Atlantic. Let's rewind to the days leading up to that Highgrove visit, because understanding the disaster requires us to first understand what Meghan Markle was actually hoping to achieve when she boarded that plane from California to the United Kingdom with her children and her carefully constructed plans for reconciliation. Because according to multiple sources who have spoken with Bauer and other royal commentators, Meghan had been meticulously orchestrating this trip for months, viewing it as the perfect opportunity to hit the reset button on her relationship with the royal family, a chance to mend fences that had been badly damaged by years of public criticism, private revelations, and increasingly bitter family disputes that have played out in books, documentaries, and interviews that have captivated audiences worldwide. She reportedly saw this as her moment to reintroduce Archie and Lilibet to their grandfather, to remind the world that they were still part of the royal story, and to quietly lay the groundwork for what she hoped would be a gradual but inevitable return to the royal fold. But here's where the strategic calculation gets incredibly interesting, because Tom Bauer, the acclaimed biographer who has written extensively about the Sussexes and their complicated relationship with the monarchy, claims that Meghan's ambitions went far beyond a simple family catch-up session that would warm hearts and heal old wounds, and in his comprehensive analysis, this was a calculated and deliberate move to reverse what many have come to call Megxit, the couple's dramatic and highly controversial departure from royal duties back in 2020, a departure that was supposed to grant them freedom, independence, and financial autonomy, but has instead left them facing what Bauer describes as a rapidly approaching financial cliff that could fundamentally change their entire way of life. Think about the reality of their situation over the past few years, because we've watched the Sussex brand struggle in ways that would have seemed unimaginable when they first announced their departure from royal duties with such confidence and optimism. Their Netflix deal, which was supposed to produce groundbreaking content, has delivered underwhelming results. Meghan's lifestyle venture American Riviera Orchard launched with great fanfare, but has failed to gain significant commercial traction. And even Harry's beloved Invictus Games, while successful in its humanitarian mission, has not provided the financial or reputational boost they were desperately counting on to maintain their lavish lifestyle in Montecito. Add to this the staggering ongoing security costs that run into millions of dollars annually to protect their family, the mortgage payments on their sprawling California mansion, the salaries of their staff, the legal fees for various disputes, and what you have is a financial picture that Bauer describes as increasingly desperate, with the biographer bluntly stating that the couple can see the end of the road within 5 years at best, because their income streams are drying up while their expenses continue to mount. And this financial reality is precisely why Bauer believes the Highgrove meeting was so important to them, because it wasn't really about family reconciliation at its core. It was about survival. It was about finding a way back to the one institution that still holds the key to their relevance, credibility, and commercial value. So what was the actual plan that Meghan and Harry brought with them to the United Kingdom, and how did they expect it to unfold? According to Bauer's analysis, the couple believed they had found the perfect vehicle for their return through the Invictus Games, because since Harry is so deeply involved with this event which celebrates wounded servicemen and women from around the world, it provided a completely natural and legitimate reason for him to return to the UK without making it look like he was directly asking to come back into royal life. And this was crucial to their strategy, because they needed to maintain the narrative that they were independent, successful, and not desperately seeking royal approval, even as they quietly positioned themselves for a return. However, what the Sussex team apparently failed to anticipate was that King Charles had been watching this play unfold from the very beginning, and he wasn't about to be outmaneuvered by a strategy that was, in his view, transparent and predictable, because the monarch who has navigated decades of palace intrigue recognized the pattern immediately and understood that this wasn't primarily about family reconciliation, but rather about rehabilitation of image and restoration of commercial viability. The Highgrove meeting was scheduled, and this is where the power dynamics become absolutely fascinating, because Charles reportedly made several key decisions that fundamentally altered the nature of this entire encounter and ensured that Meghan would leave feeling humiliated and defeated. First, he limited the meeting to just 47 minutes, which is barely enough time for a formal conversation, certainly not enough for the kind of warm, emotional reunion that Meghan had been envisioning. And this wasn't accidental because it sent a very clear message to the Sussexes that while the king was willing to meet with them, he was not willing to give them any significant amount of time, attention, or validation that they could later leverage for publicity or commercial advantage. Second, he ensured the meeting would be strictly private with absolutely no photographers present, no official statements released, no photo opportunities that could later be used to suggest that a warm reconciliation was underway, and the palace reportedly had a zero-tolerance policy on any imagery that could potentially be commercialized or used to suggest that the Sussexes had regained their previous royal standing, which was a devastating blow to Meghan, who had undoubtedly hoped for photographs that could be strategically released to rebuild their public image. Third, and this is where the strategy becomes particularly interesting, he invited Queen Camilla to be present throughout the entire meeting, not as a passive participant who would simply sit quietly in the corner, but as an independent witness to everything that was said and done, someone who could later confirm exactly what had happened and prevent any future attempts by the Sussexes to spin the conversation to fit their own preferred narrative. And this decision fundamentally changed the dynamic of the entire encounter, because having Camilla present created a situation where Harry and Meghan couldn't later claim that something had been promised or agreed upon that hadn't actually happened, and it also created an atmosphere of formality and accountability that made it much more difficult for Meghan to manipulate the conversation or create opportunities for future publicity. Let's talk about King Charles's approach here, because this is where we see a monarch who has learned significantly from past mistakes. Because remember the early days of Harry and Meghan's relationship, when Charles was welcoming, accommodating, even affectionate, walking Meghan down the aisle at their wedding, publicly embracing the couple and their modern vision for a more progressive monarchy. But that was a different Charles, a less experienced Charles. A Charles who hadn't yet experienced the pain of public attacks from his own son and daughter-in-law. The man who sat across from his son and daughter-in-law at Highgrove in 2025 has evolved significantly, and Bauer suggests that Charles has become far more strategic, far less trusting, and much more protective of the monarchy's long-term interests, because he now understands that any gesture of goodwill toward the Sussexes will be interpreted as a sign of weakness, that the moment he offers an inch they will take a mile, that the moment he shows compassion they will weaponize it for commercial gain and public relations advantage. This brings us to Bauer's urgent warning to the king, which has been reported extensively in the British media, because in the biographer's view, Charles must recognize that the Sussexes are operating from a position of desperation, and desperate individuals are capable of unpredictable and potentially damaging actions, and Bauer has reportedly cautioned the king against any form of accommodation, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. Because the moment Charles offers any gesture of goodwill, it will be interpreted not as kindness, but as weakness. The moment he shows any flexibility, it will be exploited for commercial gain and public relations advantage. And this is precisely why Bauer has consistently advised the king to maintain complete and absolute distance from his younger son and daughter-in-law, not out of cruelty or paternal rejection, but out of pure institutional necessity. We also cannot ignore the Prince William dimension, because according to Bauer, the Prince of Wales's opinions weighed heavily on Charles's decisions, and this is where the Sussex team seems to have fundamentally miscalculated, because William and Kate have been rebuilding their public image over the past few years, focusing on their duties, their charitable work, and their position as the future of the monarchy, and they have absolutely no intention of allowing the Sussexes to disrupt that progress. Because Bauer suggests that the Cambridges are privately furious about Harry and Meghan's ongoing public commentary about the royal family, because every interview, every documentary, every book has created fresh wounds that haven't healed, and every public statement seems to reopen old conflicts and create new tensions that make reconciliation increasingly difficult. So when the Highgrove meeting was being planned, Charles reportedly consulted William extensively, and the future king made his position very clear that any signs of welcome toward the Sussexes would be perceived as a threat to the stability of the monarchy, because the rehabilitation of Harry and Meghan cannot happen while they continue to critique the institution that William will one day lead. And this family dynamic adds an incredibly complex layer to the entire situation, because it's not just about a father and son anymore, it's about the future king protecting his legacy against a brother who has consistently undermined the family in public. According to Bauer, the meeting ended without the outcomes Meghan had hoped for, and the disappointment was reportedly devastating because she had invested so much emotional energy and strategic planning into this moment, and to walk away with nothing to show for her efforts was a profound humiliation, because when the meeting concluded after just 47 minutes, there was reportedly no major agreement reached regarding Harry's return to the United Kingdom. No solution to his security concerns, which have been a persistent source of tension, and no indication that the royal family was willing to reconsider their position on the Sussexes' status. Meghan eventually stood up, took the children, and left Highgrove to return to their Montecito home while Harry remained behind to continue preparing for the Invictus Games. And according to Bauer's sources, Meghan was furious because she had not achieved anything she wanted, and her list of demands, which reportedly included specific accommodations at Buckingham Palace, had been completely ignored, because the palace had made it absolutely clear that there would be no photo opportunities, no public displays of reconciliation, and no chance for the Sussexes to create powerful imagery that could later be used for publicity purposes, leaving Meghan feeling humiliated, frustrated, and potentially questioning whether there was any path back to the status she once enjoyed. There you have it. This is how the 47-minute Highgrove disaster played out according to Tom Bauer's explosive analysis, revealing a calculated king who refused to be manipulated, a strategic queen consort who served as an independent witness, a future king who protected his position, and a Sussex couple whose desperate attempt to reverse Megxit ended in complete and utter failure. Because what we witnessed at Highgrove was not a family reunion, but rather a power struggle that revealed the true dynamics of a monarchy fighting to protect itself from those who would exploit it for personal gain. What are your thoughts about this situation? Do you believe King Charles handled the Highgrove meeting appropriately, or should he have shown more warmth and flexibility toward Harry and Meghan? Is there any path back for the Sussexes, or has that door been permanently closed? We want to hear your perspective in the comments section below. And if you want to stay updated on every breaking royal development, make sure to subscribe to CrownLens Insider like this video. And click that notification bell so you never miss our exclusive analysis, because we bring you the stories that other channels won't tell you. And we do it with the depth, accuracy, and insight you deserve. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in our next video with another explosive royal revelation that is guaranteed to shock you. Until then, keep following CrownLens Insider, where the truth about the monarchy is always revealed.